Okay, hello everyone, thanks for joining today. So my name's Scott Tipple and I work in the Scottish Home Renewables team here at the Energy Saving Trust. So today's webinar is going to focus on consumer protection on renewables and is part of a series of webinars we're delivering throughout the year. So this work's funded by the Scottish Government as part of their support for home renewables, which is there to help lower Scottish householders' energy bills, meet climate change targets and help build a lower carbon economy. So before we get started, I just want to go over some general housekeeping points about our webinar, just in case you've not attended one of these before. So you can hear us, but we can't hear you. This is perfectly normal for webinars, so don't be alarmed or worry about background noise, etc. On your screen, you should have a control panel, and this will allow you to type questions, which we will aim to answer at the end during a Q&A session. And these questions won't be visible to other listeners, but we will see them here. And if there are any issues such as sound cuts off or if there's any technical difficulties, you can let us know through this questions panel as well. We're also recording the webinar and we'll send a link around so that you can listen later. And finally, we expect the webinar to last between 45 minutes and an hour. So if we take a quick look at the agenda for today, first you'll hear from me, where I'll highlight some of the useful sources of information on renewables, outline why you should choose a certified installer and how you can search for an installer. I'll then pass you over to Colin Meek, who has over 10 years experience in compliance monitoring of the micro-renewables installation sector, and he'll cover some important information about the kind of consumer protection that's available for individuals looking to install renewables in their home. We'll then finish off with a kind of questions and answer session addressing any questions you've posed to us throughout the webinar. So yeah, without further ado, we'll get started. So this is kind of a brief overview of what I'd like to cover before passing over to Colin. So the content is really focused on highlighting what information and support is available to help empower you with the knowledge you need to kind of make an informed decision. So one of the initial questions you should be asking yourself before installing renewables is this technology suitable for me, my lifestyle and my property? So I'd like to outline some of the resources available to help you decide if and what renewable technologies are suitable. And then once you've decided on the best system for you, you'll then need to find a qualified installer. So I'd like to therefore give a quick overview on why it is important for your installer to be certified, where you can search for these certified installers, and what questions you should be really asking them. So who are we and yeah, why should you listen to us? So the Energy Saving Trust is kind of regarded as a trusted organisation that offers independent and impartial advice to help people save energy. To do this, they deliver programmes for government and provide kind of consultancy to UK businesses and international companies. And Home Energy Scotland is an advice network that operates across Scotland. The expert advisors there offer free and impartial advice on saving energy, keeping warm at home, renewable energy, low carbon transport, waste reduction, and much more. So this programme is funded by the Scottish Government and it's managed by the Energy Saving Trust. So there are two main channels that we use to help householders in Scotland who are interested in renewables. So the first is via the online resources and tools found on our website. And the second is through the advice and support provided by Home Energy Scotland. So to help you understand what renewables might be suitable, then the first action should be to learn a bit more about those different technologies and what you should expect from them. So our web pages on renewables contain information on a host of different systems, including electricity generating technologies such as solar photovoltaic, wind turbines, hydroelectric. You've got heat generating technologies like biomass, solar thermal, heat pumps, and then energy storage systems as well. So that's your heat and electric batteries and thermal stores. So each dedicated web page will give you an overview of the technologies, outlining some of the key benefits, considerations, kind of typical fuel bill and CO2 savings, and then any financial support that's available. Apart from the web pages which provide information on the different technologies, we've also got the Renewable Selector. So this is a great tool for those looking for assistance to help determine which technologies are suitable for their property. So it does this by asking a series of questions about the property itself, such as the building type, whether it's detached, semi-detached, a flat, insulation that's installed, so loft insulation, cavity, solid wall insulation. It then asks some questions that are more specific to determining the feasibility of different renewable technologies, such as is there space for a biomass boiler and wood storage? Is there an unshaded roof? So ask questions along these lines. So the answers are then used to generate a report which highlights the suitable technologies, outlines kind of important information, and then links to useful resources. So finding a technology that's suitable for your property does not necessarily mean that it's suitable for you. One useful resource that we have to help overcome this barrier is the Green Homes Network. And now this is essentially a network of properties across Scotland that have installed energy efficiency improvements or renewables. It allows you to not only search and filter properties on the network, but also you can arrange to speak with one of the owners of the property, and in some cases visit the property itself to see the technology in action and find out whether it's something that would work for you, really. The network also aims to link up those interested in renewables or energy efficiency measures and those who have already installed them. So it kind of helps tackle that information and knowledge barriers that exist. And those looking to further help and support on renewables, you can call Home Energy Scotland on the number that's on the bottom left of your screen there. So as mentioned, they're a free and impartial advice service. They offer advice and support on a whole host of topics surrounding energy and sustainability. But understandably, some of these topics are quite detailed and more complex than others, which is why each advice centre has specialist advisors who cover topics such as renewables and traditional build properties. So these specialist advisors are well placed to offer support on a basic level, discussing the different renewable technologies, their suitability for your property, or this could be done on a much more advanced level where an assessment of your property is carried out and a report's issued which outlines the savings from different renewable technologies and can highlight some of the next steps you should take when you're looking to install a system. They can also help you find a suitable installer for the system you want to install, or help you review some of the quotes that you've been supplied with to ensure that they're appropriate. Another additional resource once you're at that stage, once you're looking for an actual renewable installer, is the Renewable Installer Finder tool. So it's very aptly named. As you likely guessed, it's a tool that helps you find installers of renewable technologies. So the list is compiled of renewable installers operating in Scotland that are certified through the Microgeneration Certification Scheme and have chosen to register on the tool. So I'll come back to what that term means. But the tool is useful as it allows you to search using your postcode. You can highlight the technologies you're interested in and then browse the different installers in either a list view or a map view. So you can then click on the installer, which will take you to their profile, which contains information including ratings and reviews from householders. So this really stands out from other websites. Also highlight things like if they offer any special offers at that time, or qualifications held by the company itself and the engineers, and details of any warranties or aftercares offered by as part of that installation. So what kind of installer should you choose? On the previous slides, I mentioned that the Renewable Installer Finder tool only contains MCS accredited installers, but I didn't explain what that is. We always recommend using an installer and a product that are MCS certified. This is not only a requirement to access government funding, such as renewable heat incentive or different interest-free loan funding we offer, but also ensures that the installer is a member of a Consumer Code approval scheme. So examples of members include the Renewable Energy Consumer Code, You've got the Home Insulation and Energy Systems Contractor Scheme and the Glass and Glazing Federation, but there are others as well. So these consumer codes are all approved by the Chartered Trading Standards Institute. So what does all that mean? They're all quality standards in place for the installer and the products to ensure that basically small-scale domestic renewable systems are installed and work to a high quality. It also ensures that there's a high standard of customer service before, during, and after a contract is agreed. Now, I'm starting to get into kind of consumer protection, which is Colin's realm of expertise, so I won't say any more, as I'm sure Colin will be able to cover it in far more detail and precision than I ever could. What I would like to highlight finally are some of the questions you should be thinking about when approaching an installer. First off, they will be able to provide a detailed breakdown of the specification and costs of their proposed system, but additionally they should be able to kind of explain how they have worked out the size of that system and if it's appropriate for your needs. They'll be able to give you kind of clear and easy to understand information about how to actually operate the system as well to kind of maximize the efficiency. They should be able to explain what you'll need to do to maintain that system, how often, and importantly, they'll be able to provide an estimate of how much heat and electricity or electricity will be generated by any system and what proportion of this will meet your current needs, and also give you a kind of estimate of the savings you should expect after the installation. So this is important, and that they kind of outline this. There's no requirement for you, but if they do, then that kind of gives you some grounds to work from. So I'm sure Colin will kind of go into the importance of that and why you should ask these questions a bit more. But really, that's kind of all I wanted to cover just for now. I hope that's acted as a kind of brief introduction to some of the useful resources available. Before I pass over to Colin Meek, I'd like to play a short video which will be a quick introduction to the Renewable Energy Consumer Code. So remember, if you have any questions on anything I've said or anything that's contained in this webinar, then feel free to ask the question through the control panel and we'll look to address these at the end. So I'll just link you to a video now and then I'll pass you over to Colin afterwards.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Colin Meek from the Renewable Energy Consumer Code. So this is a presentation that will last about 25 minutes, and it's a focus on consumer rights, but will offer pointers on finding an installer and making sure you can make an informed choice. So there are 6 main sections to this presentation. I'll cover a bit more about Renewable Energy Consumer Code's role and the MCS scheme. I'll cover the consumer journey in some depth with a focus on performance predictions. I'll cover the importance of contract terms and cancellation specifically. Briefly on paying for the installation, what you should expect after sales, and I'll touch on what happens if things go wrong to give a bit of reassurance. Okay, the Renewable Energy Consumer Code, very briefly, because Scott covered some of this, is administered by the Renewable Energy Assurance Limited, which is owned subsidiary of the Renewable Energy Association. And REAL's work administering the Consumer Code is overseen by a supervisory panel chaired by an independent consumer representative. And as Scott said, the Consumer Code is approved by the Chartered Trading Standards Institute under the Consumer Code's approval scheme, and RECC is also a Trustmark approved scheme operator. So RECC aims to, as very specific aims to ensure that consumers wishing to install renewables have the necessary confidence to do so, and service standards so they can make an informed choice. And RECC does this using a range of methods. And it's important to say that the Consumer Code is not aims and aspirations for the industry. It's not a trade body with set goals for its members. It's a compulsory set of membership rules. And RECC monitors member companies using audits, mystery shopping, complaints monitoring. And it's important to say that RECC goes beyond the law in what it expects of its members. It also provides a means of resolving disputes that's cheaper and faster than court action, and it is an approved alternative dispute resolution provider. Okay, so MCS, I'll be very brief here because Scott covered this, is a mark of it aims to give reassurance by making sure that installers are certified and the products that they install meet specific standards. And it's very important to know that installations must be carried out by MCS certified installers and use those products to be eligible for incentive schemes such as the RHI or the Home Energy Scotland loan. As many of you will be aware, the feed-in tariff is ending this month, but is due to be replaced by a smart export guarantee. Now, if you install technology where it then becomes eligible for the smart export guarantee, it would need to still be fitted by MCS certified installer and use MCS equipment. So that's an important thing to bear in mind. Okay, so if we think about consumer rights in terms of the whole journey, and the journey starts when the installation is being sold, so as in the advertising, and your rights extend way beyond the installation. So if you consider the whole consumer journey, you have rights throughout that journey. At the selling point, advertising must be legal, decent, truthful and honest, and RECC members must use the telephone preference service and the mailing preference service. So if you're a member of TPS or MPS, or if you've registered for TPS or MPS, then you should not be receiving material or calls from that specific company. Advertising is often focused specifically on the performance of the system and savings you could make or the income you will generate. And if you rely on those claims when you decide to sign the contract and those claims were inaccurate or incorrect, then you have rights in law to complain or challenge that. And I'll come on to that in more detail later. So something that people are often very concerned about is unacceptable sales practices. Now, most companies will be very diligent and considerate, but as with much of the home improvement sector, a minority do deploy unacceptable practices, and these can be unlawful. Now, there's some confusion about what constitutes unlawful practice in this regard, and I'll explain that in more detail. So under RECC, sales agents should be dealing with consumers politely, honestly, and with integrity, and special rules apply when companies carry out sales visits to customers' homes. So it's very important to know the difference between a contract signed in the presence of a sales agent when you're sitting with them in your own home, and perhaps a contract that is left for you to sign in your own time, and then you send the contract signed at a later time. So the legal rights vary. And I'll come on to that in more detail, but it's very important to understand the difference. So non-compliant practice is likely to be illegal practice. So if the company is not compliant with the Consumer Code, it's likely to be illegal as well. So under RECC, members must not use selling techniques designed to pressurize the consumer into making an immediate decision. And such techniques are likely to be unlawful and include things like staying in your home for an unreasonable length of time in order to put pressure on you to sign a contract, or offering an artificially high initial price followed by a discount. That's called drop closing. Other examples would be withholding price information or offering a discount for signing at the time of the sales visit. But some techniques are less obvious, and I would like to highlight a couple of those. They can include things such as making you feel obligated to sign a contract, obligated to sign the contract by offering incentive gifts, for example. Another very common one, and one to watch out for, is falsely claiming offers are very special to a customer. For example, the seller pretending to phone or actually phoning their boss for permission to offer a discount. This is a classic sales practice that would be unacceptable. So these are pointers to you if those techniques are deployed, is to exercise extreme caution. Another very important part of the code is the protection offered to vulnerable consumers. And under the code, your installer has an obligation to identify consumers who are vulnerable and proactively suggest solutions that may help. Now, consumers can be vulnerable to rogue selling for many reasons, but one example would be older people may feel less able to challenge aggressive sales agents. And obviously, people who can't read printed text may not be given all the information or feel that they've been given the information they need. So if you're listening on behalf of someone you know who may be vulnerable, you can make sure they have someone with them during a sales visit if they think that would help. And really, the installer should proactively insist on this once they recognize someone is in a vulnerable situation. It's very important to stress, either to you or to the person that you're listening for, is that that you shouldn't sign anything until you've had all the time you feel you need in order to make an informed choice. Okay, coming on to performance predictions, which are incredibly important. Your installer is likely to put a lot of emphasis on this. They may carry out, they may offer you an estimate that's based on a technical survey, and that's the more likely scenario. But if the estimate is not based on a survey that's already been carried out, then they must make this clear, and they must tell you that the performance estimate may change following the technical site visit. Okay, so under the code, installers must not oversell the system that they're proposing, and there's strict rules in place to ensure that estimates are realistic. And those rules also apply to related products such as solar PV battery storage. Now, you must be given the technical performance information that's specified in the relevant MCS standard. But this information will vary depending on the technology. And this formal standard way of presenting performance claims means that you'll be able to easily make comparisons between installers. And the following pages will detail what you should expect. Be extremely cautious about any proposal that does not include the formal performance information that we describe in the next few slides. Okay, so solar PV, you must be given a table of values as set out in this slide. Now, you should also be told if there's any potential for shading of the solar panels from objects such as trees nearby or chimney stacks, and shading can severely curtail the performance of a solar PV system. Now, the information in that table is essential, and you can use the output in kilowatt hours at the bottom of that table to estimate how much you may save in fuel costs simply by multiplying the kilowatt hours by the unit electricity price that you pay. For heat pumps, you should be given a form as shown. Now, this is called the Heat Pump System Performance Estimate and indicates your current fuel spend and your predicted spend on electricity needed to run the proposed pump. It also predicts your possible RHI income. And you should study this information very carefully and make sure the electricity costs indicated are realistic. For solar thermal, you must be given a form as indicated as well. And this is called the Thermal Solar Performance Systems Detail and Energy Calculator, which is TSPEC for short. And this describes the proposed system, the estimated renewable heat for RHI purposes, and an estimate of possible savings. Again, study this carefully. Now, biomass is organised slightly differently. There isn't a specific form or table that you should be given, but this range of values, and some of them are very important. So obviously the annual heat demand of your property and the proportion that the proportion of the heat and possibly of the hot water that the system will provide. The bottom two values in that list are very important as well. The seasonal efficiency of the heating system and the estimated mass of fuel required in a year. So you can easily take that and estimate the potential cost of the fuel that you need in the form of pellets or logs, for example. Make sure you understand the cost of the fuel for the proposed system and how much you're likely to spend each year. Now, you may also be given a lot of other information related to performance in the form of graphs, forecasts carried out that extend over many years, and other claims and tables. The short tip really with that information is to treat it with caution if it varies significantly from the formal MCS information that you're given. Really, the most important information on performance you will be given is the MCS, the formal MCS information in the previous slides. Okay, 3 tips on making an informed decision that are really important related to performance. Firstly, be cautious, in particular when offered financial forecasts and any claims on return on investment. Some proposals are presented as if they are financial products when they are not. Get more than one quote and preferably 3. And remember that the standard information should enable you to make comparisons between installers, and installers should be asked to justify claims that vary significantly from what other installers are telling you. Forecasts that indicate an accumulating benefit over many years are likely to be very unreliable. And remember, small changes in fuel costs and/or inflation can cause forecasts to go wildly off target. Okay, turning to issues such as permissions and approval for system installation. Your installer should know about the approvals needed for specific technologies and will be able to advise. And you need to agree who will take responsibility for applying for any permission. Don't just assume the installer will do this. So a very important point in this regard is the Energy Performance Certificate. So you may be asked to organise obtaining the EPC, or the installer may do this for you. And the EPC is very important for most incentive schemes. For more information about the EPC and the RHI, see that Ofgem link, which is frequently asked questions about EPCs. So So most installations would not require planning permission, but there are some exceptions, and your installer should be able to give you information about that. Permission that might be needed would be things like planning, building regulations, or connections such as an electricity supply or the EPC as we've described. And after your installer has clarified what approvals are necessary, agree who will take responsibility for obtaining that approval, and update and they may need to update and reissue quotes if they're affected by any conditions of approval, although that will be unlikely. So just quickly on site surveys, in most circumstances, code members carry out and pay for the technical survey that's needed before they draw up a detailed quote. Now, if you're told there will be a fee for the survey, make sure the cost is clear and reasonable before you sign the contract. And your installer must give you the full survey report when it's completed, even if you don't go ahead with the full installation contract. Also, check whether the fee for the survey will be refunded if you do go ahead, or it might be deducted from the contract price. Now, I want to briefly describe a new scheme which some of you may be aware of. It's called Assignment of Rights, and it's a way homeowners can gain help for paying for a renewable heating system. Now, what it does is allows a company, which may be the installer, and this entity is called the registered investor, and they will pay for all or part of the new system and will arrange the installation. Now, what they get in return is you apply for the RHI and assign all of the RHI payments to that investor. And what you get in return is you get a system that's fully or partly paid for by the investor, and you, in theory, will benefit from lower ongoing energy bills. Now, it's obviously possible to make significant energy savings by using renewable heat technologies, but sometimes systems may not be right for your property, and in some cases savings aren't possible. So before you make this decision, it's really important you do your homework. So you have to be certain that you will make savings before you sign an assignment of rights contract. Before you do make any move in that direction, make sure you have a look at the RECC, the detailed RECC guidance on assignment of rights for consumers, and the link is given on that slide. Okay, so with the proposal pack, the quote that you were given, you will be given a terms and conditions document, and you have very important legal rights to challenge that any clauses in that document that may be unfair. Unfair clauses tend to give the company more powers than they have in law, or they restrict your legal rights. If you're unsure of a clause, you can contact RECC, or you can complain to RECC. Now, good contracts tend to minimize the chance of dispute between you and the installer. And this is really important for complex contracts, for example, like home installation. There's a huge amount of confusion about contracts, and some consumers and even some businesses think a contract is binding if it's signed, and this is not true. Consumers cannot be bound by terms that are unfair in law. So contract terms should seek to clarify the terms of the purchase. And if you think a term is unfair, you should complain. So an example of an unfair term might be something like the company may at any time vary or add to these conditions as it deems necessary, or the price may be adjusted if costs relating to the order increase prior to delivery. Again, unfair clauses tend to give companies more power than they have in law, or reduce your rights that you have in law, and therefore they are unfair. So remember, you can challenge terms even though you've signed the contract. So turning to cancellation, again, this is a very, very important part of the Consumer Code, and it's really important for you to understand your rights here. If you sign an order form or contract with your sales agent in your home, this is known as an off-premises sale, and you have the right to cancel the contract from the moment you sign it up to 14 days after the date the goods are delivered. So it's a very long cancellation period, and it's very important you know that you have that right. Now, the company may want to start the installation during that whole period, and for them to do that, you must give your permission. If you do give them permission and you later cancel the contract, then you will have to pay for any of the work that started. Now, giving that permission for the work to start is your choice, and you should not feel pressured into giving permission for them to start the work. Irrespective of how you signed the contract, whether it was in front of a sales agent or you sent the contract by post, all consumers under the Consumer Code have a right to cancel up to 14 days from the date the contract is signed. So that is very clear. Everyone has a cancellation period of 14 days. If you sign the contract with the sales agent in your home, your cancellation period, you have extended rights. Exercise extreme caution if you're not given any information on cancellation or you're not given the correct information. Okay, very quickly, paying for the installation, you can't be asked for more than 25% of the contract price, and the total sum of all advance payments must not exceed 60% of the total cost of the work before the work starts. On after sales and guarantees, you must be given the manufacturer's guarantees and any terms and conditions that apply. Additionally, under the code, the installer must provide you with a workmanship warranty for at least 2 years, and the warranty must cover the installation process and the workmanship. Importantly, the warranty must be insured. It must have workmanship warranty insurance, and the deposit, any deposit paid or advance payment, they must be insured as well. So your rights extend beyond the installation. So the goods sold must be of satisfactory quality, fit for purpose, and as described by the trader. And if you rely on information given to you by the installer in a quote or in advertising, for example, then that description must be correct, and it can be unlawful for the installer to provide misleading or incorrect information. You can challenge the installer if that's the case. And you would have a range of remedies if your rights are not met. For example, if the goods are faulty, you can reject them within 30 days and seek a refund. But if the problem emerges after 30 days, then you can seek a repair or a replacement. It's very, very important to remember that your rights relate to the installer, not the manufacturer. The installer can't say, they can't deflect a complaint you have by saying that they can only help if their claim against the manufacturer is successful. Your claim is against the installer, not the manufacturer. In terms of services, consumers have two core rights in law related to services. The service must be carried out with reasonable skill and care and provided in line with information given about the service or the trader. Even if the installation is successful, your installer may still be in breach of one of those two core rights, for example, if they damage your property. The two additional rights are the service must be provided at a reasonable price and within a reasonable time. And if your rights are not met, then you're entitled to have the work made good or have a price reduction. Okay, I'll just spend a few seconds on dispute resolution and related complaints. So rarely things may go wrong, but it's very important that you understand the procedure if there is a complaint or a dispute. If you're without heating or hot water as a result of the problem, then your installer should arrange a visit within 24 hours. In all other cases where a home visit is appropriate, your installer should arrange a visit within 7 days. In any case, your installer should respond to you within 10 working days of receiving the complaint. Now, a small number of complaints may then result in a dispute. If you're not satisfied with your installer's response, you can complain directly to RECC or MCS. Now, RECC would deal with anything related to the contract, but if the complaint is related to technical aspects of the installation, then the complaint would be directed to MCS. Well, it would be the MCS's, the certification body that certified the installer. And technical complaints would be, for example, workmanship, damage to property, electrical safety, or poor installation, and so on. Where there is no progress as the result of a complaint, RECC would seek to mediate between you and the installer. And the resolution team would mediate using their best endeavours to achieve a resolution that's fair and acceptable to both parties. If the dispute is still not resolved through mediation, you can request independent arbitration. And under the code, consumers have a right to ask for the dispute to be referred to the independent arbitration service, which is appointed by RECC. And if you do refer the complaint to arbitration, the installer must cooperate. And that alternative would be to seek resolution. An alternative to that would be to seek resolution through legal action, but it would be quicker to achieve resolution through the arbitration service. Okay, I think we can move to questions and comments now, and I'll hand back to Scott. Please see www.rec.org.uk for any more information, and thanks for listening.
Hi, thanks, Colin. That was incredibly useful for me. So I'm sure those listening have found I've got a lot out of it. So yeah, it should certainly empower the viewers to kind of throughout the renewables journey and highlight what rights they have as individuals and as consumers, and certainly there's a lot of pitfalls out there, so it's good to be aware of them. So I think, Colin, you should be able to view questions that have came through as well. Yeah. I think a lot of them are quite specific, so I don't know if you want to address them. We've got a few minutes to answer a couple anyway.
I've got one question that I see. Somebody has asked about finance and the impact of any finance or interest payments. What I would say about potential we do get quite a number of complaints about finance, and what I would say here is just to be incredibly careful, because obviously any interest charges can negate any energy savings that may be available.
Hmm.
So it's very important that you treat finance agreements with the greatest of care. And this is why the Home Energy Scotland loan scheme is so good, because obviously that is interest free. So I would just treat finance deals and finance offers with a lot of care.
Okay, good. There's a question there, what can I do for after-sales support when my installer has gone out of business? So I think that touches on what you were saying about the insurance-backed warranty. So even if a installer does go out of business, then that warranty, because there's insurance backed with it, then whatever the length of warranty period, then that shall still apply. Is that correct, Colin?
Yeah, that's right. So if the company offers a 5-year warranty insurance voluntarily, then the insurance that they have should cover 5 years warranty insurance, workmanship warranty insurance. The minimum would be 2 years.
Hmm.
And
that's included on the MCS certificate details, isn't it?
And this would be through RECC. So,
right, okay.
So that's a RECC right, if you understand my meaning. So the contract would state that you would have workmanship warranty insurance of however it's set by the installer, but the minimum would be 2 years.
Yeah.
Now, if you need help and advice on maintenance and so on after the workmanship warranty period is gone, then RECC can still help with that and put you in touch with local installers who would help maintain the system after the workmanship warranty period.
And kind of building on that, do RECC hold another consumer code? Do they hold information on warranty periods for a system? So the MCS certificate will highlight on it the kind of system that was installed, the installer, the property. It'll highlight who which consumer code the installation was registered with. So that would be the kind of first thing to look at, would be the MCS certificate to see which consumer code it is registered with, and then contact them. But would they then hold information on warranty periods and who the insurance was lodged with?
You mean if the system had changed hands?
Yeah, so let's say, so is the insurance lodged directly with the consumer code? So in the example, if you had solar PV and it failed within the 2-year period, but that installer had gone out of business, you would contact the consumer code and then they would be able to handle the complaint going forward.
Yeah, the consumer code would be able to offer advice, but it's the consumer who would be given the actual insurance documentation.
Right. Okay.
The consumer would be given, and if the property that was then sold, that consumer should pass on those details to the new homeowner.
Okay.
But if they don't, certainly the new homeowner should be able to get advice from the relevant consumer code.
Okay. So yeah, the viewer that asked that question, yeah, best to look out for your MCS certificate in the contract, and it should give you an idea of kind of the warranty period there and who the insurance was lodged with. So, but yeah, if you can't find that information, then yeah, it's worth contacting RECC, and then they'll at least be able to advise you further in that instance. There's another question there. I guess it's related. Having already installed a Dakin hybrid heating system, assuming a heat pump, we have had various issues and would appreciate being able to seek guidance on what to do next. Can you please advise who we can contact and how to contact them by phone? So yeah, I guess, again, obviously the installer is the first point of call, but then failing that, you would look to find out what consumer code that installation has been lodged with. But yeah, it kind of falls on from that previous question. So yeah, it's looking at the kind of your contract, looking at the MCS certificate, and finding out what the terms are, and then contacting the appropriate consumer code, and they'll be able to advise further on the specific case.
Yeah, I mean, what's really important with that type of issue is that firstly, that the questioner has contacted the installer and the installer has been given a chance to resolve the issue.
Okay.
If the questioner has tried that and 56 days have elapsed, in terms of the installer has been given 56 days to try and resolve the issue, then they should contact the relevant consumer code. And if it's a contractual issue, then the complaint would stay with the consumer code. But it sounds like it's a technical issue, and that means it would be passed to the certification body, that installer certification body, and that would they would then try to resolve the technical complaint.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, that's all the questions we have time to answer just now, I'm afraid. But yeah, if we've been unable to answer your question, then what I'll do is I'll follow up after this webinar, and I'll contact you directly. But yeah, on screen there will be a link which will kind of, on that page, it'll highlight if we've got any upcoming webinars or any events. So it's worth kind of keeping informed of what's going on. But I'd just like to give a final thanks to Colin for joining us today. Thank you for those who attended the session. Like I said earlier, the webinar's been recorded, so we'll be sure to send a link around, and you can use that for future reference. Yeah, thanks again for joining, and best of luck with your renewable installation.